For a moment there, you sound like President of Russia, Putin. He said exactly the same thing.
Well, there you go.
Yes, we get the oil money inside and we're relaxed and we believe everything else is going to run easily. As you have said before in the last program, you hear economist Gregory McGuire is our guest we're talking here. You said for the past 14 years, TNT enjoyed a windfall combination of oil and gas. Paradise will not be revisited because the prices is just not what they used to be. The Middle East and the rest of the world, including Venezuela, are in bad positions right now. Looking at our reality, Gregory McGuire, the government now must make some decisions. Speak to me as to what I don't think many politicians will say straight up front. There are some social initiatives that must be sacrificed, discontinued, curtailed, or severely constrained.
Well, I mean, I think the government has signaled its intention, to cut back in certain areas. I mean, the euphemism they use for it is to say that we are seeking to improve efficiency of use of resources, and that is true. That's what they're trying to do. But at the end of the day, the real issue is that they simply don't have the money to support a number of things that at present we enjoy. So to speak specifically to some issues, I think one of the benefits of the indirect benefits for the government, that is, about the fuel subsidy, is that in fact as prices fall, as the price of oil falls, so too does the amount government pays on the fuel subsidy. So the fuel subsidy at these levels may not be a burden. As a matter of fact, I'm quite certain that we drivers, motor vehicle drivers, are paying a tax right now on premium. Because premium prices are way above what they ought to be given to today's market price. We may be paying a premium as well on the super gasoline, although I haven't done the numbers recently. But these are still subsidized to some extent. So that burden is less of a burden today. And obviously, if one is planning move forward, one now needs to begin if prices do recover, one needs to simply say, look, going forward, the driving population will bear the brunt of world market price increases. The best time to drop the subsidy, so to speak, is when prices are low. And so as they begin to go up, Trinidad and Tobago begin to feel the reality of what it means to live in a country where prices of gasoline and so on and electricity move with world market prices. You see, we've been insulated. We've been living in this cocoon, and I don't know that, as I've said several times. Well, I've said to you, certainly on this program. Once we get accustomed to living like that, it's difficult to change it, and such changes usually lead to issues of social unrest and protests.
Which is not dissimilar to what has happened in Venezuela, folks. Speak in the context of people not having these outages and the brownouts and the sharing of the load, but nobody is speaking to the fact of the ridiculously cheap prices people pay there and how unsustainable that in itself is. And I am going to add to that and ask you to comment. One of the fears is that Trinidad and Tobago could find itself in an area not too distant from what prevailed in Venezuela. This has been touted by folks who say that we have to do a complete readjustment or possibly confront those consequences.
Well, I mean, at the presentation of the budget, the deficit was $20 billion, I think. At that point in time, we were talking about an oil price of I think $50 or $45 or thereabout. Prices have fallen significantly since then, down to in the early 30s now, $31, $32, and therefore one could only speculate now that the deficit is going to be much larger. So, as I've said, in other places, the real budget is going to come in April. And that's when we will see exactly A, the size of the deficit, B, what measures the government will take in order to save, let's just say, the economy from complete collapse.
For those of us who are not in the educational room, you are in understanding a lot of these things. I am going really slow here because there are some who are saying that come 2020, you may be looking at gas prices on oil, gas on a rebound, saying that it could get better. I remember it was touted that the IMF and the World Bank were looking at 2020 as a possibility for recapturing some of this. And at the same time, I have heard you say, and of course, correct me if I misrepresent, that whether it be exploration or production, you are never going to return to those glory days. So even if it rebounds, you cannot count on that. Am I correct?
Well, I would definitely have said even if it rebounds, we definitely cannot count on that, or we ought not to count on that. Let me just say a few things to put this thing in context. Will prices rebound? Yes, I think they will. How soon? Well, as everybody else, I would think somewhere between 2018 and 2020. Why? Because the world is now, and the oil business and gas business, the oil business in particular, is now starved of exploration, starved of capital for new exploration. So what you're going to have is a dip in exploration, which is going to impact ultimately on reserves, which is going to impact ultimately on available supply. In addition to which, one expects the demand is going to come up. Now, having said all that, the battle for market share that is going on is far from complete. And we still hearing the Saudis are saying, well, if this falls to $20, that's okay for us. And signaling that they're not going to, at least, the only concession one has gotten from them is that they will cap production and nothing else. But there are other people who are still producing. So the point is that this, as I said earlier on, and as many people have said, this is a structural change in the market, both for oil and for gas, and we should not expect ourselves to recover from this anytime soon. More importantly, though, I think it would be a crying shame if this society, government, corporations, individuals, everybody, households, if in fact we were to sit here and kneel and pray for prices to recover and believe that's going to be our salvation. And it would be the worst mistake that we could make as a country. I think that if it recovers, we should save as much as possible. But more in particularly, I think now the low prices and the fiscal crunch is going to once more bring to the forefront this whole question of diversification. And therefore, once we get on that, focused on that, and this rounds, I don't think we should ever let up again.
Economist Gregory McGuire is our guest inside Brunch this morning. We're talking about the new reality. One of the things that we know will come, if not in April, surely not far down the line, if we are to follow through on what we're talking about, that there is not going to be this quantum recovery, is the question of a lot of social projects. Either initiated before this government or planned by this current government. There are those who argue you cannot stop that, because if you do that, you stall the economy, you stop the money moving through, and of course, everything takes into the domino side of this. Do you see some major curtailment in some of the government projects? Social projects.
I think that I don't think the government has a choice. I don't think the level of social expenditure can be sustained. I don't know how much they will cut it by, but I think that there's going to be cutbacks all around. It may well be, for example, that those who work in these social work programs, who are accustomed to, say, I don't know, maybe 10 fortnights a year, that might be cut to 4 fortnights a year, or 5 fortnights a year, 6 fortnights a year, as the case might be. But I think that everybody needs to get ready for an serious adjustment in their revenue, and therefore a serious adjustment in their expenditure. I believe that those in university, in particular those who know that they've not been performing, I think that some elements of gate are going to be reduced.
You were not adverse to means testing?
No, I'm not adverse to means
Yeah.
testing at all.
No,
I mean,
no,
I've
no,
been
yes.
to the I worked in the university. I see what is happening up there. I see people who are on gate and wasting time driving motor cars and living in expensive
There are a lot of
expensive
people,
apartments.
and I must pause you there for a moment just for you to delineate on this issue of means testing. A lot of folks, they hear that and they run into a panic, and means testing is also tiered. Would you explain to our listeners when we say means testing that folks understand and not grab the panic hat, as it were?
Look, I think people begin to panic when they hear means testing because they think that the threshold is going to be very low. But typically what would happen in a means testing arrangement is that, okay, so say everybody who has a family income below $10,000, $12,000 a month, they probably will get 100% funding. Those at the next level will probably get, 80% funding. So as your income level goes up, the amount of quantum of funding that you get will go down. So those are the upper levels of society where the average household income is probably, maybe $140,000 or above, or $120,000 and above. They'll probably get just 20% of the funding. So I don't believe, but right now they get 100% funding. And I don't believe that those at the lower income levels are going to be affected by this at all. The other thing that I suspect is going to happen is that the government is going to be very much more stringent on applying that performance rule, whereby if people are repeated failures, they simply will lose the option of accessing gate. And those two could bring some savings. I think that government, I keep telling people that there's so much waste in this country. And my classic example is the lights at recreation grounds, some of which burn all night. And some grounds, the only thing that is on the ground during the nights are goats who can't know, they'll tell the difference between night and day because there's lights blaring on them all night.
Which invariably is going to affect their production because their system has been altered. Yes, indeed.
Yes,
so you lose all around.
Such a huge waste, and everybody loses, So and that's just one example. I mean, but there are a number of areas in which government, firms, as well as households could begin to make the adjustments that are necessary if we're to survive.
But I did ask you to pause, and I thank you for the clarity in the means testing area. You were continuing, however, with some of the social programs you feel will have to be curtailed.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the government's approach is going to be one of restraint. They will attempt to hold in place, as they should, the bulk of these programs, but they simply won't have the fiscal space to do them all. For government, a government that is seeking to close a fiscal space, I think, is going to devote some more resources towards improving its tax collection. I think those of us who own companies, big and small, could expect that Border Inland Revenue is going to get very much more vigilant with the collection and payment of taxes.
Our